How's everybody doing? Hey, before we get started, every soldier, sailor, airman, marine, coast guardsman, first responder, police officer, please stand so we can thank you for your service to this great nation and to our communities. Thank you. Let me see if I can take this picture down. I mean, it's scaring me up here. No, seriously, that was my official congressional photo from 2011. So it is 10 years old. As you notice, I don't have black hair up here anymore. I wonder why. After meeting Nancy Pelosi and Maxine Waters, it can scare your hair white. Okay? Look, I'm going to take maybe about 20 minutes to just talk. I'm not going to take a whole hour. I would bore you guys to death, bore myself. But I'll take probably about 20 minutes, and then I want to open it up to you all and kind of have a real town hall meeting. Hear what's on your mind, your thoughts, your concerns, and what have you. But I do want to stress a few points before we get going. You know, some people out there came up to me and said, you know, Carl, I'm discouraged. I'm a little depressed. I'm a little despondent. Don't ever come up to me and say that. Now, seriously, don't. Because the spirit of a soldier is that they're never discouraged. They're never despondent. They're never distressed. They're always looking for victory. And if you think about what was going on here in Texas 185 years ago right now, you know, last week, Saturday, the Alamo had fallen. And they could have been discouraged. They could have been despondent. They could have been depressed. They could have said they were going to give up. As a matter of fact, 3 weeks after the Alamo fell, March 27th, Colonel Fannin, his soldiers were executed down at Goliad, La Bahia. But see, what that did was that inspired the men who won the freedom and liberty of Texas on April the 21st of 1836. They weren't despondent on the San Jacinto battlefield. They were not discouraged. They were ready for a fight. And what did they say? What was their rallying cry? They said, remember the Alamo, remember Goliad. I want you to remember what happened last year in November of 2020. I want that to inspire you. I want that to create a fire within you that you will never allow this to happen again in the United States of America. I want you to understand that the success that we had here in Texas, the hundreds of millions of dollars that the Progressive Socialist left and the Democrat Party wasted here in Texas, and they got zero electoral gains. But that doesn't mean this battle is over. We've got to get ready for them to come again. And when they come again, we got to defeat them even more resoundingly. And when they come again in 2024, we got to crush them again. Because that is what you do on the battlefield as a soldier. You don't compromise, you don't appease, you don't negotiate, you don't acquiesce to the enemy, you crush them. And that's what we have to be focused on doing here in Texas. So, Mr. Mayor, thank you for having me here in your city of Leander. And this is an example, as you and I were discussing. When constitutional conservatives govern as constitutional conservatives, look at the success that you have here. Look at the community that you have here. If we try to be a lesser version of the other side, we only confuse ourselves and we confuse the electorate. You know, it says in the Bible, where's the pastor? Where you go? Pastor says in the Bible, in Revelation, it says, you're either hot or you're cold. If you lukewarm, I'll spew you from your mouth. It's time for us to be red hot. Amen. Instead of blue cold. Yeah. You get me? And if we are red hot, then that fire that will be here in Texas, that fire that created this incredible Lone Star State 185 years ago, it will be rekindled and it will be passed on to our children and to our grandchildren. That's the most important thing we have to do. Municipal level elections coming up. Early voting April the 19th. The day of voting May the 1st. These are the most important elections in the United States of America. See, too often we sit back and we are so concerned about what happens in Washington, D.C. We're so concerned about the House of Representatives or the Senate or the President But Tip O'Neill once famously said, all politics are local. And if you really want to make a difference, you've got to make a difference right here with the folks you're going to hear from that are going to be running for city council. You got to make a difference right here with your school board. I saw the video. I saw the video. Was that a hallelujah moment or did I mean, she freaked me out. I started to go for my gun. Okay. All right. You lucky. School board is the most important elected position in the United States of America, but it's also the election that has the least amount of voter participation. I saw the video of the woman testifying before your school board about the book that they are reading to our children. How insane, how insidious, how heinous that we're teaching indoctrinating these type of things to our kids. And the only way it changes is right here. For you electing people that want to train up a child in the way that they should go so that when they grow old, they shall not depart from it. That's Proverbs 22:6. And that's where it starts. It starts with us here in the local communities. County commissions. It's so important. County clerks, so important. You know, everyone's looking to the federal government. You know who does elections? The county does elections. And we have good people on our county commissions. We have good people as county clerks. Then we can have the right processes and procedures for our elections. But Leander and these communities right here in Williamson County are so important. Why? Because this is part of this I-35 corridor where the progressive socialist left is trying to control. They believe if they control the I-35 corridor, the major urban population centers that start from Denton, run all the way down to San Antonio, they will one day control Texas. You probably will see a new congressional district come into this area from Hayes County up here to Williamson County because of all the growth of population that's moving in here. I want to win that congressional district. But the most important thing is it starts with you all at the city level and it starts with you all at the county level. You know, Mr. Mayor, you just told me all the growth that you're seeing here. But you got to make sure it's the right kind of growth. You got to make sure that when you see that U-Haul van pull up here in Leander, you go out and you talk to them. Okay? Because too often we don't talk to people that are coming in. And when we don't talk to people that are coming into our communities, we don't tell them the history of this great state, the only state that ever fought for its independence by itself. When we don't share the uniqueness of Texas, then they just figure it's just like where they came from. And they trash it. It ends up looking like Austin. And we don't want to look like Austin. We don't want that homelessness situation. We don't want to see that rise of criminality. We don't want to see the violent crime that is happening in Austin. We want to keep a nice community here. But it starts here locally. It starts with these municipal level elections to get the right type of people to stand up for the city of Leander. And that's how we prevent the cancer that is in so many of our major urban population centers. I live in Garland and Dallas County. You know what's going on in Austin and Travis County. You know what's happening down the road, San Antonio and Bexar County, Houston, Harris County. They come in, they take over that major population center, and then that cancer metastasizes out into the suburban areas. And they're knocking on your door here. I know they are. You got to turn it around. You got to protect your turf. What did they say? Under Armour once said, defend this house. That's what you have to do. You have to have the same resolve that Joshua said in chapter 24, verse 15, where he said, choose for yourselves today whom you shall serve. Being the gods of the Amorites or the gods from across the river, but as for me and my house, you serve the Lord. So now you need to start talking about who you're going to serve as far as God and country and Texas in your house, because it's so important that it starts in our local communities. So thank you for having me here to talk on a time when you're getting ready for these local elections. Because what you do here resonates all across the great state of Texas. Because we've got to keep Williamson County red hot, not blue cold. And it all depends upon you. And the second thing I want to talk about, and then we'll get to your questions. Folks, I have never seen a greater challenge to the liberties and freedoms of we the people of the United States of America than what we're seeing right now. When you look at the legislation that's being passed in the United States House of Representatives, when you look at the complete abdication of the roles and responsibilities, the duties of people in the Congress, the White House, Supreme Court, they're not following their constitutional enumerated duties. They're not honoring their enumerated powers. But yet, we have an opportunity here in the state of Texas. You know, the filing for bills is over for our legislative session. Now it is about these bills being heard in committee. It's about these bills being voted on. And the most important priorities, we have that for the Republican Party of Texas. If you have not been to our website, please go. 8 very important priorities. And those priorities tie back to everything that we see happening and coming down from Washington, D.C. The number one priority is election integrity. And all you have to do is understand why is election integrity so important. Look at H.R. 1. H.R. 1 is the nationalizing, the federalizing of elections under the control of the federal government. That's not one of their enumerated powers. I cannot find that anywhere in the Constitution. And remember, the 10th Amendment says that all of those powers not delegated to the federal government are reserved to the states and to the people. So H.R. 1 wants to have universal mail-in ballots all across the country. It wants to have same-day registration, same-day voting. It wants to have online voter registration. No scrubbing of voter registration rolls. No picture ID. Felons can vote. You see where I'm going at? But why? Because the left understands that the last 2 Democrat presidents, in their first midterm election cycle, they got bushwhacked. In 1994, Bill Clinton lost 54 congressional seats. Contract with America, Newt Gingrich. In 2010, Barack Obama lost 63 congressional seats. That ugly guy right there ended up getting elected to go up to Congress back in 2010. They know what is coming down the pipe for them in 2022. So what are they trying to do? They're trying to take over elections. That's why all we have to do is have a state legislature that says everything you guys are trying to do in H.R. 1, we're going to block you. We're going to have strong Texas election law. And if you break or violate Texas election law, you're going to do the perp walk. No more of this universal mail-in ballots. No more of this curbside voting. No more trying to find gaps and ways that you can exploit us. We're going to make sure that you go to jail here in Texas. And I need you to call your state representatives and your state senators to make sure we have strong election laws in Texas. Everything that H.R. 1 wants to do, we got to block. That's the number one priority that we have to have. The second priority that we have. The second priority is monument protection. I finished my Army career just up the road at Fort Hood, Texas. Fort Hood is named after a Confederate general, John Bell Hood. Now, when I was at Fort Hood, Texas, I never had John Bell Hood drop me for push-ups. He never made me run an extra mile doing PT. He never chewed me out. So why is the United States military putting together a commission to change the names of our military bases? We got some paratroopers here. We all served at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Fort Bragg was named after Braxton Bragg, another Confederate general. Braxton Bragg never offended me whatsoever. I grew up in Atlanta. Outside Atlanta is a place called Stone Mountain. Robert E. Lee, Jefferson Davis, Stonewall Jackson, engraved into the front of Stone Mountain. They never did anything to me. Our history is there for us to learn from, good, bad, and different. George Santayana in 1928 or so said, those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. We must protect our monuments. We must protect our history. We cannot allow this cancel culture to come here in Texas and erase our Texas history. The fact that we have these out-of-control kids at the University of Texas, they're saying, we don't want to sing the Eyes of Texas. Well, guess what? Maybe you shouldn't be at the University of Texas. Go find another school. Okay? It's time for grown-ups to be grown-ups. You know, some of these things that these kids are getting away with, my dad would have beat me half to death. Starts in the home. Third legislative priority is religious liberty, religious freedom. H.R. 5 that the United States House of Representatives passed. How many people here have read H.R. 5? H.R. 5 caught it. Come on now. How many people read H.R. 5? You got to read it. It ain't that long. Even a guy with a Tennessee education can do it. But H.R. 5, ladies and gentlemen, it codifies the LGBTQ agenda over our religious liberty and religious freedom. Pastor, I mean, you could go to jail because of H.R. 5. If you're not preaching, you know, their doctrine, their dogma, you start talking about traditional marriage. And let me tell you something, folks, in Texas, this thing has already happened before. How many people remember the mayor of Houston, Annice Parker?
Oh, horrible.
Annice Parker once sent subpoenas to pastors for their sermons. Religious liberty, religious freedom is so important. Our fourth legislative priority is this right here. Constitutional carry. Sir, do you have a permit for your freedom of speech? Okay. Do you have a permit for your freedom of expression? No. Anybody here have a permit for their right to petition government for redress of grievance? Pastor, do you have a permit for the freedom of religion? So why do we have to have a permit for our second?
Constitution, Pastor, right?
You know? I've been married 31 years. And I have 2 daughters. And I just tend to believe that when I leave the house, I don't have to hear any shout outs from women too much. Obviously, you were talking to my wife, Angela, and she said, interrupt him at leisure. Yeah. If we don't have to have any permits for our First Amendment rights, we don't have to have a permit for our Fourth Amendment. Why do we have to have a permit for our Second Amendment right? It's a constitutional right. There are 16 other states that have constitutional carry. Not Texas. Vermont has constitutional carry. Utah just passed a law that says that you don't have to have a permit for concealed carry. Now, understand this. If you want to have a concealed carry permit, I get it. I understand. That's for reciprocity if you cross outside the state of Texas. But here in the state of Texas, you should not have to have a permit for your constitutional right. We got to pass constitutional carry here in the state of Texas. Our fifth legislative priority, ladies and gentlemen, I don't care what happens with the economy. I don't care what happens with national security. If we continue the practice of murdering our preborn babies in the womb, the United States of America will never be blessed. Last year in Texas, 54,000 babies were murdered in the womb. Since 1973, Roe v. Wade, over 20 million black babies have been murdered in the womb.
Mostly minority.
Let me tell you something. For soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Coast Guardsmen, if we're on the battlefield, if we go up and desecrate the body of a dead soldier, you know, like take off an ear, hack a limb off, or something like that, you're going to be spending a good deal of time in Fort Leavenworth. But we are dismembering children in the womb,
And selling
limb by limb. That's a heinous practice. And furthermore, when you talk about white supremacy and racism and all this stuff, just remember that the person that founded Planned Parenthood was a white supremacist, was a racist, spoke at Klan rallies, referred to blacks as undesirables and weeds. So why don't we see Black Lives Matter down in front of that huge headquarters in Houston with the Planned Parenthood name up there and protesting against them? This is an issue that we got to solve. 73% of Planned Parenthood clinics are located in communities that look like me. We got to win this issue. Our next legislative priority is to end child gender modification. Let me tell you, if you're not paying attention, boy, I tell you what, don't need any sirens as long as you're around. If you haven't been paying attention, we're starting to give hormonal therapies to kids as young as 6 years of age. Now, think about it. Ladies and gentlemen, when you were 6 years of age, I mean, you know, I don't know about y'all. I was running around with cap guns, my skates, my bicycle. I wasn't thinking about, well, was I a boy or was I a girl? I was not going to come home and tell my dad, Dad, I don't want to be Alan. I want to be Aline. Woo, bad choice, man. It would have been all over. But we have teachers that are indoctrinating our children. We have teachers that are abusing our children. Modified puberty blockers. Alabama, their legislature just passed a law that said anyone that gives child gender modification to an Alabama teen, 19 and younger, it's a crime. Okay? We can do that here. We can do that here. Now, our next legislative priority is school choice. Okay? You got a cohort on the other side. School choice is so important. Why is school choice so important? Because you're looking at a product of school choice. I grew up in the inner city of Atlanta, Georgia. And my parents, lower middle income parents, they said, we are not sending Alan to a failing public school in our community, the old Fourth Ward neighborhood. They sent me to a small black Catholic school, which was located right across the street from Ebenezer Baptist Church. Can you imagine what it was like for a little kid every single day of your life to walk past Dr. Martin Luther King's final resting spot? That's how they invested in my education. That's why they understood that if you want equality of opportunity, it starts with a good quality education. Parents should be making the choice for their children's education, not a teachers union and not any lobbyist group. We have got to pass school choice. Ron DeSantis in Florida won his gubernatorial election on the issue of school choice. Single black Democrat mothers crossed over and voted for him because he said that I will not allow your child to be relegated to a failing school. School choice, this is a civil rights issue. All of this lockdown of our schools, maybe y'all probably got some really good schools out here. I have no doubt about it. But you think about some of those kids, think about some of those kids in our inner city environments. They don't have A and B rated schools. They're falling further and further behind. And their parents don't have the ability to make a choice. Let me tell you something about the Democrat Party. And you can use this anytime you want. Once upon a time, the Democrat Party stood outside the doors of education to keep black kids from coming in. Now they stand inside the doors of education to keep black kids from getting out. Feel free to use that. Now, the last one is taxpayer-funded lobbying. Your taxpayer dollars should not be going to lobbyists down in Austin to come back and lobby against your best interests and efforts here in Leander or here, wherever. So we got to make sure that we clean that up. And then the final +1 part is executive overreach. The Constitution is very clear about the duties and responsibilities of the legislative branch, executive branch, and the judicial branch. The only people that can make law and amend law is the legislative branch. We are not here to be ruled over by edicts, mandates, orders, and decrees. And I think some of y'all know I made a pretty strong statement about speaking out against HB 3. We cannot codify into law the actions of an executive, because then we stop being a constitutional republic and we become a constitutional monarchy.
Yep.
Election integrity, monument protection, religious liberty, constitutional carry, ending the murder of preborn children, ending child gender modification, school choice, taxpayer-funded lobbying, executive overreach. Those are our legislative priorities that you all, the grassroots of the Republican Party here in Texas, said that you want to see passed in this 87th legislative session. So please contact your state house and your state senators, because now those bills out there are going to be in committee, and we want them to get out of committee. We want them to get on the floor to get a vote. Texas has to lead the way. Texas has to show that we are the epitome of a constitutional conservative state. There were some people here that came up to me outside and said, you know, Colonel, I moved here from California because I thought that I was coming to this incredible place of freedom and liberty. I will tell you, you are in a place of freedom and liberty. We just got to remind people about that. We got to make sure that we stand up for the things that we say that we believe in, just the same as this incredible mayor is doing.